Hello, everyone, and welcome into today's edition of To The Point Podcast. Everybody's doing well. A lot to get into today. Some news in the baseball world. We got NFL free agency. You had last night. You had the first four in the March Madness start. The Maple Leafs won a game. That's obviously a headline. Vegas Golden Knights continue to struggle. So lots to get into today. Lots of drama, lots of rumor, innuendo, lots of content, which is exactly what we root for here on the podcast. But I've heard rumors the last couple of days, and you read all these articles, and you say, well, Freddie Freeman would be a good fit for the Blue Jays, and I've heard this for a few days, and I never really understood it because I said, well, where's Freddie Freeman going to play? He's a first baseman. Vladimir Gurow Jr., the third, is a first baseman. Is Vladdy going to DH? Is Freddy going to DH? I would love Freddie Freeman. I would love his bat, but I just didn't see a natural fit. I just didn't see a spot where I said, okay, that makes the most sense. But then you look around and I see, well, I mentioned this yesterday. Third base is really a spot where the Toronto Blue Jays could look to upgrade. Santiago Espinal is a really good utility player. He can play third, second, short. He can play anywhere in the infield. But he's not an elite player. He's a guy that you want to be playing, 80 games a year. He might play spot duty late in games, but not a guy you want with a bat in his hand every day of the season. And today, to the credit of the Toronto Blue Jays, to the credit of their management, who I think are really, Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins. I think both guys are very good at what they do. I think they're very good team builders. And although they were really given a lot of criticism early on, I think they've delivered on their promise of, delivering and providing a really good team to the city of Toronto. And what did the Blue Jays do today? They go out there and trade for a 3-time Gold Glove winner, one of the best defensive third basemen in baseball. You could argue the best, and that would be Matt Chapman of the Oakland Athletics. And Oakland has been tearing it down. They traded Olsen the other day to the Atlanta Braves. They traded their manager, Bob Melvin, to the San Diego Padres earlier in the offseason. And now Matt Chapman, the guy who anchors the corner, who is as stable as it gets, is now a Toronto Blue Jay. And I'll start off by saying this. For a new audience, for people who don't listen to me, I don't have a favorite team. I don't root for anybody. Toronto's the only Canadian team in baseball, but to be quite honest, I could give a crap if they win. But I look at moves, I look at decisions, I look at management. I think this is a home run move for the Toronto Blue Jays. They have 4 prospects. Kevin Smith, who would have likely been competing for a roster spot this year, likely third base, but they get Matt Chapman instead. Gunnar Hoglund, it looks like he's going to be a starter. Kirby Snead is a reliever. I think he could have made the Blue Jays team. But you got to spend money to make money. And these guys are fringe MLBers. What you get on your team now is a guy who's a major league talent, who has some offensive power in that bat. And the biggest thing for me is he's phenomenal defensively. And Bo Bichette, I've talked about it. I don't love him at short. I think long term, he'd be better as a second baseman. I just don't think he's that great defensively. Vladimir Gurow Jr., he's gotten better. He still has his warts at first. I think it was so imperative just to get somebody in there that can play 150, 155 games. He's going to be solid. He's going to have competitive at-bats. He'll be consistent. And it's a spot really the Blue Jays have not occupied since Josh Donaldson departed. And oddly enough, when the Blue Jays went on their run, got to the American League Championship Series twice, they traded with the Oakland Athletics for a third baseman. Josh Donaldson, as you all know, went on to win a MVP, runner-up for an MVP, and was a Toronto icon. Well, they go down the same well, and Chapman is not the offensive player that Donaldson is. I don't see him being an MVP type player, but who knows? I didn't see Marcus Semien coming last year. Matt Chapman he could hit 30 home runs, get 85 to 90 RBIs. That's not out of the realm of possibility. But even if he is, he bats 250, gets 20 to 25 home runs, solid, has little to no errors at third, I think that's the biggest part of this team because they have the bats to compete with anyone in the American League. You could argue anyone in baseball. But too many times last season, the Toronto Blue Jays should have won games. Or you could say, well, is there relief pitching? Okay. At the same time, there was errors and Bo Bichette in the wrong position. Vladimir Gurow Jr. makes a wrong play. Out to lunch in the outfield. And those catch up with you. There were games they threw away because of just defensive misassignments and just it wasn't working. So now I look at it and say, this is a great move. It's a phenomenal move. The Blue Jays, he was going to get traded. Oakland was dealing him somewhere. You want to be the team that gets him. And it's win now. The Toronto Blue Jays should have the mindset, why not us? Why not the Toronto Blue Jays? Okay, well, the New York Yankees are in front of you. Well, the New York Yankees are kind of an old team. Chapman's mid-30s. Donaldson's mid-30s. Stanton is in his 30s. They have guys that have really big names, have a lot of brand name value. But I look at the New York Yankees like an old pair of Jordans, but not like the pair that you kept in the box and that you took really good care of. They're like that pair of Jordans that you wore outside and you forgot it was muddy. You drag them inside and you're like, holy shit, I just lost myself a ton of money. Or the Yankees are like they're like that game ball that was sold, Tom Brady's last touchdown that was sold, and now that poor bastard whoever bought it for $500,000 is sitting there saying, this is completely worthless the second Tom Brady takes a snap in week 1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Blue Jays are young. They're fresh. I think the Rays are still second base could still be improved. They could still add another starting pitcher in my mind. Kikuchi they added. He's good, but I look at their team and you could still Hyunjin Ryu is a question mark. He's gotten worse every year since he's come to Toronto. He seems to fade in the middle of the seasons. He's got a bloated earned run average. How's Manoah going to respond after a great rookie campaign? How does he pitch? So, but every team has warts, and I think that's something that is, in Canada, obviously the Blue Jays get talked about more. And in the States on the mothership, they're going to talk about the Yankees. They're going to talk about the Dodgers. That's really the only two teams they talk about. But these other teams, Tampa Bay doesn't have great hitting. Maybe it's just a year where a bunch of guys they sign for dirt cheap money, because that's all they do, don't produce. And they have an off season. The Red Sox had a great year last year, better than anybody you could have even thought of. Well, maybe it doesn't go as well. Maybe it's not as easy to transition. They drop off. The Blue Jays scoot in a little bit. They only missed the playoffs by 1 game last year. And then, like I mentioned, the Yankees aren't the greatest team ever. There's also expanded playoffs. More teams are going to get in. So there's more opportunity than ever for these teams, for a team like the Blue Jays, for a team. I look at the Chicago White Sox. The Twins are a weird team because I see them add players and they trade them off. And I'm like, well, what are they doing? So there's that. But there's a lot of good free agents still available. And the Blue Jays add Matt Chapman. Great, like I said, great move. Love it. I look at a guy that they could add, and this isn't a pitcher. This would require a lot of money. They're not going to do it. I don't know if he'd want to come to the Blue Jays. But I really like Nick Castellanos. Nick Castellanos, former third baseman, turned right fielder. He's still free, which I couldn't believe. I read that last night. He's a really good ball player. He's smart. I think he's a guy that teammates really like. So I look at him as an outfielder. He can play left. He can play right. He's rangy. I like players that can do more than one thing. I think he can occupy. He can definitely occupy right field for you. But if you have guys coming in and out, I still think their outfield could be improved. You got Springer in center, hopefully. But you could have Castellanos in right. You got Teoscar in left. You can move some pieces around. Because I think in a perfect world now that you have Chapman, so third base is occupied. You have Vladdy. You have Bichette. Second base is still kind of up in the air. Does Espinal get at bats there? I think it'll be a rotation. But if you could get Castellanos in your outfield, Teoscar Hernandez could be your everyday DH. And I don't think Teoscar Hernandez would love that proposition, but that would be the best spot for him because he's not a great fielder. Even in left, he has his problems. I don't think he reads the ball really well. He's often late on breaks. And I think Castellanos would be a better fit in that outfield. Teoscar Hernandez, because you have that vacant spot. Everyday DH, he can play some outfield when guys need an off day. But that's what I would do. And maybe Teoscar, in spring training, he can take some ground balls at first. Because Vladdy will want a DH game. I assume like once a week they'll do that with Vladimir Gurow Jr. So he's a DH every now and then. Teoscar could play first that day. But that's what I would do. I would look at a guy like Castellanos, who I know can play the outfield. He's got a great bat. He's got some flair. And it opens up for a better – you can have really good power bats. But that's not why you win more often than not. You win with great pitching and really good defense. Well, if your pitching is going to be average, then be really, really strong defensively. Have guys that can make plays to make up for a ball that's hit. Chapman can make that play. Castellanos can make a great catch in right. Springer can do that in center. Maybe Bichette can grow into that shortstop role, and before you know it, he's winning a Gold Glove. He's looking like a stud out there. Maybe. But as I look at it right now, that would be a great fit because it opens up more things for your lineup. Then you have Kikuchi, you got Manoah, you got Ryu. You go through your starters, Jose Barrios. You can go 4 to 5 deep already. And, I listened the other night, Keegan Matheson, who's a Blue Jays reporter for the Toronto Sun. He was talking about how Nate Pearson's being stretched out. And they'll likely start him the season as a starter, see where that goes. If I'm the Toronto Blue Jays, when they first got Nate Pearson, they envisioned him being a 33 start a year, awesome guy, sub 3 ERA, just a horse. He goes into the playoffs. He pitches like Roy Halladay. He pitches like the greats. He just throws smoke, like John Schmaltz. But I don't think that's the best case scenario for this Blue Jays team. I just mentioned their starting pitching isn't great, but all last year, all you heard about the Toronto Blue Jays, well, their bullpen stinks. Well, their bullpen is struggling. You're seeing the flaws with this team. Well, if I'm the Toronto Blue Jays, Nate Pearson, I want him as my late game. He might be a closer. He could just be a 7th, 8th inning guy. I truly, even though Andrew Miller, who obviously was with the Yankees for a while, was with the St. Louis Cardinals, he is one of the best relievers in the last decade, at least in Major League Baseball. I view Nate Pearson as an Andrew Miller, a guy that in a playoff game, in certain games, can give you 4 to 6 outs. He can come in the 7th inning, get an out, pitch the 8th strong, get to your closer. Those guys are invaluable. I think Nate Pearson for the Blue Jays could occupy that position. He's going to throw 97 miles per hour coming out of the bullpen. His slider is 85 miles an hour. This guy is incredibly hard to hit. He's got a good diversity of pitches. And he could be your middle reliever, but in huge spots. He can get holds for your team, hold the lead for your closer, and potentially be the Aroldis Chapman, if you will, of the Toronto Blue Jays, where, yeah, Pearson's likely not going to be throwing 101, 102 miles per hour, but he's going to be throwing strong. It's going to be, you have a guy coming in and out. You have different relievers. Well, then you got him coming out throwing smoke, fastball, fastball, fastball. And that's difficult for guys to catch up to that when they're not used to throwing, when they're not used to seeing pitches go by them that fast. So that's something that I think Pearson is an X factor this year for the Blue Jays, because this team still has flaws, but like, as I pointed out, every team does. And to me, I like their team a lot even before the Chapman ad, but to me, they're now the favorites to win the American League East. And I'll even go as far as saying this. If they don't win the American League East, if they don't make the playoffs, I mean, that's a disaster because it's expanded. But I think if they don't win the American League East this year, it's a disappointing season. This team, it's been long enough where it's, well, we're growing and we're progressing. Like, you don't want to be, just to make a correlation, you don't want to be like your counterparts in hockey where all you hear is, oh, we're learning lessons and we're doing it. Like, I was a shitty student. Eventually I learned I don't really like this stuff. Let's get out of here. I'll figure out a different way. I think this Blue Jays team, they have enough veteran experience. They have enough really good players that, number one, they shouldn't fear anyone in this division. They shouldn't fear the Yankees. Yes, the Yankees have this aura because they're the New York Yankees and they play in the Bronx, and Garrett, DiMaggio, all the greats. But that was 8 decades ago. The Yankees are just a team now. Jeter's gone. A-Rod's needles still might be somewhere in that facility, but they aren't what they used to be. They're going through this renovation where they're adding more veteran players to their team, and Donaldson is on the tail end of his career. Who's catching for them on a daily basis? Other than Garrett Cole, do you trust Jordan Montgomery? Do you trust Diego Germán to pitch every other day? You can poke a lot of holes in this team. So I credit the Blue Jays for making the deal, adding more money onto their payroll, because this is what Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins said they would do when they tore the team down originally. They said, when we get rid of Donaldson, Russell Martin, all the old pieces that were here too long and couldn't win anymore. Once we got rid of the trash, so to speak, we will spend money. We're going to go through a rebuild. We will be competitive. Well, they're doing it. They signed Ryu. They have Vladdy and Bichette on the cheap, but they re-signed Jose Barrios. They traded for him. They traded for Matt Chapman. They're not afraid to make moves. And I even read today that they're kicking tires on Jose Ramirez, who's a second baseman for the Cleveland Guardians. I have to get used to that. But I don't think Cleveland is going to trade him. But I think it's something. I think it's something they should really try, because getting a second baseman, another stud in that lineup, just puts you even more ahead of the game. Puts you out in front, and then you're like, well, who's better than us in the American League? There's the White Sox. The Astros are going to lose Correa. They're losing one of their most important players. Zach Greinke left the Houston Astros. He's going to the Kansas City Royals, just signed there. So who really fears? And as much talent as you can add it. Do whatever you can to put yourself in the best possible position to win a pennant, to win the World Series, and to be there at the end. I think they're doing it. I still think there's moves to be made. They missed out on Kyle Schwarber. And honestly, I think this is a net positive that Kyle Schwarber goes to the Phillies. Schwarber's got a bat that can get hot. And The one thing I don't like about Kyle Schwarber is 1 month he'll bat 340 and the next he'll bat 208. I like consistency. I don't like a guy just to be crazy hot and then he's so cold when you need a big hit and he can't do it for you. Schwarber's a good guy to have. I think the National League is on an even playing field now because they have the DH rule. Before, you had to have a guy like Schwarber play in the field, play a position. And although he's improved his physical shape over the last number of years, I think Schwarber for the Phillies will be a designated hitter more often than not. I mean, you have Harper in the field. You have guys that can occupy those positions. So we'll see. But there's still a lot of moves that got to be made. I mentioned Castellanos. Freddie Freeman still isn't signed. He's still available. Where is he going to go? I mean, I doubt it's the Blue Jays. Do the Red Sox make a big offer? Is it the Yankees, Dodgers? Is there a team that we're not expecting that signs Freddie Freeman? He thanked the Braves today, saying goodbye to them. Well, he still hasn't joined another team. Trevor Story, shortstop. I'm sure teams want him. He's got a power bat. I have my worries about him leaving Colorado, but a team will give him good money. And there's obviously Carlos Correa, who is one of the most important players on the Houston Astros the last number of years through all their success. Whether that's tainted or not, Correa's been a really good player. Where does he go? What team scoops him up? Beginning of the offseason was the Tigers. Now I read that, the Tigers are out on Correa. Of course, the Yankees are in the mix for Carlos. Does he go to the Yankees? I don't know. But all these guys got to get signed. I mean, spring training games start tomorrow. The season starts April 7th. That's 3 weeks tomorrow. So these guys got to get to spring training, make sure they're in shape, get ready. I mean, some of these free agents are pitchers. Is that enough time for them to ramp up to be ready for opening day? I have my doubts about that. But for these bats, can you be ready to play game one? You'd like to think so. But again, it's about having continuity. It's about having your team ready, having all the pieces in place for you to go win a World Series. And be prepared from day one to go in there, grind it out, 162. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be double headers. There's going to be some times where you're like, I don't want to be playing today. But you do it anyway. And of all these, Correa is number one for me on my intrigue list. I want to know where he's going. How long is he going to hold out? How long is that contract going to be there for him? Where's he going to go? But I think depending on the team, he might just go to a team that gives him the most money, and they might be a team that doesn't win anything. Teams splash around money like crazy. Texas gave Semien and Story two of the biggest contracts in free agency. Texas didn't make the playoffs last year. Texas is a little desperate to be competitive. I don't think it's a guarantee the Texas Rangers make the playoffs, even with those two players. Corey Seager's injury prone. Marcus Semien had his career year on a contract season. That's always a worry. Can he duplicate it? Can he even get half of the production that he had last season? I'll have to wait and see. But where Correa goes, where does Freeman land? I think he'll be on a contender. I think he obviously won last year. I don't see him going to a team that he at least doesn't think has a realistic chance of making a run at a World Series. At this point in his career, he wants money, but it's also about where can I possibly win. If he signed with the Yankees, got a good chunk of change, I think you could still sell it to yourself, hey, we got a chance. We got Garrett Cole, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, you name it. And where does Trevor Story end up? Does he stay in the National League? Do the Mets scoop up? If Correa doesn't go to the Mets, do they scoop up Trevor Story? Pair him with Francisco Lindor. There's still a lot to be decided. Clayton Kershaw is signed. Certain guys are back with their teams, with their respective teams. But there's still a lot of guys, a lot of free agents out there that need a home for this upcoming season. And they don't have one. So baseball is moving. This free agency period is heating up. Here's different stories every day of where a player might go, rumors of where they might end up. Now, to me, there's good fits. And then, because you can do the model of, I just mentioned Seager, but I look at Dougie Hamilton in hockey. He went to New Jersey, signed for a boatload of money, but over the course of that contract, is he ever going to win anything? That remains to be seen, but New Jersey is not a team that has been competitive for the last number of years. If you're a Carlos Correa, do you go to a team that is just offering the most money and then you're going to lose? I don't think he's going to love that. I think he's a competitive dude. I think all athletes are, but he's used to being on a winning organization that's winning team. That's why it's great for Matt Olson and Matt Chapman to leave the Oakland Athletics. Oakland was competitive the last couple of years despite not spending much money. But they got rid of some players. They're moving in a different direction. Bob Melvin went to San Diego. And now you're looking at it saying, for Chapman, for Olson, we're under contract, we're making decent money, and we now have an opportunity to win a World Series to both of us. Olson's with Atlanta. They won it last year. They still have a very good team. Chapman joins the Blue Jays. He can say, you know what? I had no chance in Oakland. Maybe I have a great season. We get Springer, a World Series MVP, Vladdy, Bichette. Let's go make some magic. Let's go win a World Series. It could change your career. He's got 2 more years. He's 28. When you hit free agency at 30, you have a couple of really good seasons in Toronto. You can either cash in and stay, or you leave and you hit the Brinks truck elsewhere. But that's kind of where I see this going. There's going to be some teams that give out a bunch of money just to say that they did. I think we see that all. I've seen it in the NFL where there's a lot of money spent. I really don't know if they got that much better. There might be a move or two in there where you go, okay, I really like that. That's smart. They got no linemen. They needed that protection. But I talked about the trade yesterday from Colorado for Josh Manson. That made a lot of sense because the fit works. The team, what did the team need? This is where I think trade deadline and the draft are complete opposite. My draft philosophy is simple. You draft the best player available, in particular in the first couple rounds. After that, you can draft for positional need if you want and hope that the player sticks. But if you're drafting in the first round, anytime in the first of these sports, it's so critical to hit on first round picks. But if you see a player, we need a goaltender, and you have a higher grade on a center that you have 4 of, but you draft the goaltender because you needed a goaltender, that's the wrong way to do business. You draft the best player available, and if you need to trade one of those guys that you've drafted to get a goaltender, that's what you do. Because you don't want to be stuck with a guy down the line where that player goes on to have success and the goalie you can't trade for a bag of chips. Free agency, who's the best player available, but my position of need. Who could help me? Who's the missing piece of the puzzle? Josh Manson? I think Colorado thinks, you know what? Josh is a tough, physical defenseman. He could be a perfect partner for one of our offensive guys. That works. Is Giroux one of those pieces? We've talked about it yesterday. I'm not so sure. But if you're, Toronto, is Jose Ramirez that missing piece at second base that you could play every day, and then you have a loaded infield with Chapman, Bichette, Ramirez, and Guerrero Jr. No team would be able to match. Not even the Dodgers could match that. Even if they grab Freeman and you throw Muncy in there and, whoever you want in that infield. Seager's gone. They still have Trey Turner, but they wouldn't be able to match that kind of firepower, that kind of an infield. So still things to be decided, but I credit Blue Jays management for saying, you know what, we're in a position where we could win here. We could go on a deep run. We could win a World Series this year, but we're missing that corner infield spot. It's something we've struggled to address since Josh Donaldson left. Matt Chapman's available. He's a really good player. Let's go deal for him. And they did it. To their credit, they did it. And, baseball's wide. Again, still a lot of signings to happen. Still wide open. We'll see what happens. Ben Murray's going to join me in about 20, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So we're going to get into a lot of different things. We're going to talk about some stories in football. We'll talk about the Jays trade for sure. March Madness preview. She printed off a few brackets today. If you're into this March Madness stuff, you want to fill out a bracket, feel free to reach out to me. I did Seamus's forum. I'm not going to apologize if I'm wrong, but I will take credit if I'm right. But again, it's just fun. I don't fill one out myself. Honestly, I keep a bracket in the man cave here because I mark down who wins and losses. That's how I keep track of all this stuff. But if you want to fill out a bracket, you want to talk about the games, feel free, reach out. I'll be watching. You can guarantee that. So that that'll be forthcoming throughout the next couple of days. But yeah, Benny, we'll talk some football. We'll talk March Madness. Blue Jays, might even get to some hockey talk. But I was going to start with Vegas with hockey briefly. I'm not going to start there because I've talked about them a lot lately. Kudos to two of these teams. And I look at these two Canadian teams that really were write-offs early in the season. They had terrible starts. Their goaltending wasn't great. They weren't getting production. And that would be the Vancouver Canucks and the Winnipeg Jets. And the Vancouver Canucks all year were basically JT Miller show, and hopefully Thatcher Demko can play some fantastic goaltending, because otherwise you're in a tough spot. You didn't have a whole lot of depth. You didn't have a whole lot of guys you trusted. Your defense core was weak, and ultimately they had to bring in Bruce Boudreau to replace Travis Green. And like Vancouver, Paul Maurice said, I'm done with Winnipeg. He had enough with coaching. He left. Dave Lowry goes on the bench. Wasn't an easy start, but both these teams have found their stride. They're both in the midst of a playoff hunt. And despite having, impending free agents like Luke Shen and like Andrew Kopp, who would be a guy I think a lot of teams would covet from the Winnipeg Jets, JT Miller, these teams have continued to play hard, continue to battle. As we sit here today, the wild card race in the West sits as follows. You have the Minnesota Wild card. Minnesota Wild is the first wild card team. They have 72 points, 2 points behind the Nashville Predators, although they do have 2 games in hand. Vegas occupies the second wild card spot. Although they played 62 games on the season, the most in the NHL, they only have 20 games remaining, and they're struggling right now. They can't get a save. Jack Eichel. I'll touch on Vegas in a minute, but they're in the second wild card spot. Dallas is just outside that wild card. They have 67 points, although they have 4 games in hand on the Vegas Golden Knights, so they're in a better position. Then there's Vancouver, 67 points. They are a point out of the wild card. They played 61 games. So, and I always make this point, games in hand only mean something if you win them. So for Dallas, with no Heiskanen, they don't get a goal last night. Toronto's, AHL goalie shut them out. So you look at Dallas, you love that top line with Hintz and Joe Pavelski and Jason Robertson. But lately, other than that line, it's gone quiet. Sagan, Radulov, Ben, they've been non-existent. They don't provide anything offensively. So Dallas is going to hope that they can get in, but that's no guarantee. So you have Vancouver tied with Dallas, and then you have Winnipeg, who have played 61 games, and they are at 67 points, so a game out of a wild card spot. And the reason I say kudos to these teams is it's easy to throw in the towel. It's easy to say, well, Kyle Connor's going to have a great year. He'll score 40 goals. He'll have a career, he'll play fantastic. But you know what? It just wasn't our year. Hellebuyck wasn't great. Scheifele had injuries throughout the year. Wheeler has lost a couple of steps. And it might be time for the Winnipeg Jets to completely rebuild. And that still might be the conclusion after this year. Because Winnipeg, you look at it right now, they're going to miss the playoffs, more likely than not. They're at 66 points, but they'd have to jump Vancouver, Dallas, and Vegas. to make the playoffs, and Dallas has so many games in hand on these teams. But you see Wheeler is starting to find it. Kyle Connor's never lost it. Mark Scheifele is going to compete his ass off every night. And they're just finding ways to win. Paul Stastny's contributing. And the way I know Kevin shoveled day off, this Winnipeg Jets team is not going to deal Copp at the deadline. At least I don't think so. I think he wants this team to make the play. I think he knows he's been the GM since day one. He's all they know, but also at the same time, he's never been able to get them over that hump, get them to a Stanley Cup final, to be a true perennial contender. So Mark Chapman and the ownership in Winnipeg might say, you know what, we need a different voice. We've had Chevy, but we want a different guy to lead us into the future, to really give us the best opportunity to win. So I think they're going to keep their team. Maybe they make a small move at adding. Maybe that's the move they make. But, looking at that as well, Vancouver. Elias Pettersson's found his game, but he's injured right now. They still find ways to win. JT Miller continues to be a horse. Tyler Myers has played better under Bruce Boudreau. Thatcher Demko continues to be a stud. I mean, you discredit Vancouver because I look at their team and they're just not that good. They're not a very good roster. They're not a very good team, quite frankly, and they still find ways to win. And it doesn't matter who you beat. Okay, they beat the Devils last night. They played Detroit on Thursday. They should win both those games. But it's not, you play as long as Edmonton beat Detroit last night. You don't lose points for beating a bad team. It's the same number of points if you beat a good one. Horvat, 2 goals. Horvat's been great. JT Miller had another 3-point night. Tanner Pearson had 2 points. But I just look at the team, and they have guys that just come out there and compete every night. Horvat hasn't had a great season offensively, but he's battled hard lately. Quinn Hughes hasn't, he's been okay, but he's only got 5 goals on the season. That's not Quinn Hughes. He's got 44 assists, which is really good. But again, he hasn't exactly been what you expect. Conor Garland he's been okay for Vancouver. He's got 14 goals. He'll likely get to 20 by the end of the season, but I think they expected a little bit more, him coming over from Arizona. But they've got good goaltending. They got a coach that they believe in, and their best players continue to deliver. Every night, JT Miller comes to play. Every night he brings his best. That's what I love so much about him. I'm a playoff team. I'm not quitting on the JT Miller trade offers yet, because you watch him last night. You watch him every night with Vancouver. He cares so much. It's so important for him to win. He believes in this team. I'm sure it would hurt him to leave. He had 24 goals, 49 assists. That's phenomenal season. But you can just tell he wants this Vancouver team to succeed more than anybody. And he would be such a great fit for a lot of teams. I'm sure the Rangers sitting there looking at him saying, JT, hey, could you please just slow it down a bit? Could you lose some games this is the last week before the deadline? Vancouver beats New Jersey last night, a team that's going to miss the playoffs. Then they have Detroit. Again, Detroit could win that game, but you got to expect Vancouver is going to go in there, take care of business, so they continue to roll. As we get closer and closer to the date, Vancouver has Calgary this weekend. That's a tough opponent, but it's a divisional rival. Those two teams always battle hard. Who knows how that game goes? But my point being is these two teams just haven't quit. I think they're vastly different when it comes to the future. I think Vancouver, you got Horvat you'd like to keep. You got Pettersson. You have guys in place. Wheeler's on the back end of his career. Scheifele, I still think is very good. Kyle Connor is a superstar. If you were to trade him, you'd get a boatload for him. But Hellebuck's inconsistent. Morrissey, Pionk, you don't really have a number one defenseman on that team. So if I'm both these teams, I'm not trading off. It would hurt to lose Copp for nothing. I'll fully admit that. It would hurt to lose Andrew Copp, who I really like as a player. I think he would be a perfect, I think him and Lowry in the past have been great on that third line. Lowry hasn't had a great season, but Copp just competes his ass off every night. He can play in all situations. He can kill penalties. He's gritty. He'll check. He'll do whatever you ask of him. That's the best attribute I can say about Andrew Copp. He's not going to complain. He's just going to do what he has to do to get by. So what's there not to like? I mean, you'd love to trade him. And maybe, they play Boston on Thursday night. So that's a team, or Friday night, sorry. So that's a team that's going to be in the playoffs. So those games are important to stay in tight with these teams like the Dallases, like the Vegas. And so they got, before the deadline, they have Boston, then they go to Chicago. That's only 2 games. So these teams, it's not a whole lot of time to screw it up or to make you think, hey, we're out of it. Because, yes, Dallas has games in hand, but maybe they don't win them. Maybe you stay in the hunt. You're like, holy crap, we're right there as the deadline approaches. We get in, who knows? In the West, who knows? Again, Calgary looks like a great team, but they have no pedigree in the playoffs. They're not a team that's proven anything. So would you totally fear them? I think you would say, okay, this team's going to be tough to beat. But it's also, hey, we won a round last year. If you're Winnipeg, if you're Vancouver, you say, hey, we won a round the year before. We've had more playoff success in the last couple of years than Calgary has. You could paint it that way and say, you know what, we're in a decent spot right now. We could win this. But I think you just got to give credit because I don't think either of these teams, I think Winnipeg's obviously better. I think Winnipeg overall as a team is a disappointment. Because of Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, Morrissey, Hellebuck, you expected this team to be better. You expected them to be ahead of the Nashville Predators in the standings. But Nashville, I watched a lot of that game last night. It was bouncing between a lot of different games. But Nashville is a sneaky, sneaky good team. They're now 3rd in the Central. Just 2 points back of St. Louis. But, Philip Forsberg, Matt Duchene. But they get these guys that are just unknowns that they get on the cheap that are having great seasons. Obviously, Roman Yossi's been a stud. He might, they talk about Makar. Yossi could easily, win another trophy as well. But, I think Nick Cousins has been a good ad. He's pissed off people. He plays that gritty style. Tanner Janot, who's got 19 goals now after last night. He's a 24-year-old rookie, undrafted. He fits in. He's got a big body. He can get chippy if you want. But he's got 96 penalty minutes on the season, so he's not afraid to mix it up. But he just plays his ass off every night. Made the team out of camp. Has played every game this season. I like him a lot. See, Luke Cunnin is a guy that, he's another guy. He's a chippy type forward. But Tomasino, this team they work hard. And when they need it, Yossi steps up or Duchene or Forsberg. They still have their big boys. But this Preds team is going to make the playoffs. Maybe they could get home ice. Who knows? But the more I watch them, the more I'm like, I don't really want to play this team. Because Saros could be a goalie that just gets super hot in the playoffs. He's the smallest starting goalie in the NHL. But he's one of the more consistent because he just makes the saves. He's always calm, cool, collected. I still like Minnesota, but the way they played lately doesn't have me excited about this Minnesota team, about their prospects. They're trading off guys to help Colorado open up cap space. And they're hoping things stick. And you still have Marcus Foligno and Eriksson Ek, and it's a tough team, but they're in a playoff spot. I wouldn't say comfortably right now. But I think Nashville is more likely to, even though they're only 2 points up, I think Nashville feels better about themselves right now than Minnesota does. Sometimes it's just about your mindset. I mean, Minnesota has Boston tonight. Boston's coming off a back-to-back. They got a win last night in Chicago. But how does Minnesota play? They still have question marks in net. Talbot, Kakinen are working through it. But it's tough to go into the playoffs when you don't have a defined number one goalie. And you have a banged up defense and you look at your forward group and say, do they have enough? We have Kaprizov, we have these guys, but do we have enough scoring to compete with the top end teams? That's a question mark. So, yeah, I just look at some of these, like Nashville. I really like their team. I think they've only gotten better throughout the year. Los Angeles, I mean, they lose last night to Colorado. That's no shame. But, it's going to be a battle in the Pacific because you have LA with 74 points currently. They're second in the Pacific right now, but Edmonton's got 2 games in hand. But Edmonton still has major question marks because Edmonton, they win last night 7-5 or 7-4, whatever it was. But Koskinen's been playing good net, but he lets in 5 goals last night. And there's still, do you trust Koskinen to win your playoff series? Absolutely not. You don't trust him to play fantastic when you need him most. So LA's young. They got question marks. Edmonton still does. Vegas, I touched on it. Riley Smith is hurt now. They don't have Mark Stone. They don't have Alec Martinez. They're banged up. They don't have Robin Leonard. Jack Eichel just doesn't look involved enough. It's way too casual, this team, for the position they're in, how casual they play. That's one thing I notice about them. They just don't seem to have a purpose out there. You played the most games in the NHL. You're going to need some help down the stretch, and you just play you play like it's not a big deal. That pisses me off. If I'm a Vegas Golden Knights fan, I say, I'm irritated because I'm like, okay, we're a good enough team. We should make the playoffs. We shouldn't be in the mix with Edmonton and LA. We shouldn't be behind those 2 teams. But Edmonton, Vegas, LA, Vancouver, in the Pacific, Calgary's going to make it. I mean, they get 79 points. I think they'll get some more wins down the stretch, get a bigger lead. They have a 5-point lead on LA right now with 3 games in hand. But the West playoffs are going to be interesting because I think the East is loaded with Tampa and Florida, Carolina, Toronto. These teams that are really good, I think, cup contenders. Out West, obviously Colorado is going to be at the forefront. St. Louis I like St. Louis. I think they could go on a run this year. Is it Ville Husso or Binnington? To me, it's Ville Husso right now if I had to pick a starter for game 1. They still have their flaws, but I like the Blues team. Again, Nashville's tough, but a lot of these teams haven't proven anything. Minnesota, Dallas, Nashville. So I think the West is more of a hot mess. The West is going to be, on paper, it should be Calgary, Colorado, Western Conference Final. I don't know if it's going to be that way, though, because, again, we've seen in past years where things just don't go right for one team, where it's a lock for them to get there. All those years was, Washington will be in a cup final this year. They run into Pittsburgh, or they run into red-hot Yaroslav Halak when he was back in Montreal, and that team that won the President's Trophy, that was the favorite, ultimately didn't get to their destination. So, again, I think the playoffs in the 2 sports upcoming with playoffs, when you got NBA and NHL, I'm looking forward to them both so much. I think they're both going to be spectacular. I think the NBA is going to be really, really competitive. I think the NHL playoffs, in particular out west, might be competitive just because the teams aren't very good. LA, Edmonton, all these teams aren't that great, quite frankly. St. Louis is, I think, in the next next month to get to the playoffs, they should take a step. They should be at least 10 points clear of Nashville, of Minnesota, of Dallas, and maybe they will be come the end of the season. Maybe they'll be in second spot, locking it down, and it's Nashville and Minnesota battling it out to see who will play them in the first round. But in the next month, it's about, for some teams, just about making the playoffs. I also think it's about separating yourself and making yourself a contender down the home stretch. But I see we got our guest on the line, so we're going to bring him in. He's rocking the Blue Jays cap quite fittingly for the big move today. But we haven't spoken to this man since the end of the NFL season. So, Benny, good to see you. And how are things in your world?
What's up, Jug? Thanks for having me back. I love the new setup you got there. It looks good. I love all
Thanks.
the interviews you've been going with too. I gotta say, I think maybe I enjoy the Doug McLean interviews a little more than everybody else. There's a lot of good inside Columbus talk I absolutely love. So you're doing great things, and happy to be back on.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, Doug's great. All those great Columbus stories. I was thinking of you when I get him on because I'm like, you're the only Columbus fan I know.
It
And
was pretty neat because you had him on right before the Rick Nash jersey retirement.
right, yeah,
I
he's gone
listened
that
to your
week.
interview. I think what it was a Monday or Tuesday maybe, and then the jersey was retired on the Saturday, and he spoke at the retirement ceremony. So it's kind of cool. I got a healthy dose of Doug McLean that week.
Yeah. Is Rick Nash the greatest Blue Jacket of all time?
Yeah, hands down. And he was like, he's the reason I'm a Columbus fan, and I'm proud to say that. I get the criticism. People like you see the trolls on Twitter when we announced his jersey retirement. Like, how many playoff wins does he have? How many cups? It's like 0 and 0. So, but besides that, like it was almost more what he meant to hockey in Columbus. Like there's a
Hmm.
fantastic video they showed at his retirement ceremony, and it was narrated by Sean Correa, which was pretty cool. And he just
Cool.
talked about the influence that Rick Nash has had on the city, and you see the numbers in minor hockey, and they've just skyrocketed over the years. And the barn, like they're in a rebuild this year, right? But the barn's like it's packed pretty much every game. So just the influence I think that he had on hockey in Columbus meant so much. And obviously the things he did on the ice, he owns pretty much every meaningful franchise record.
Right.
So he's without a doubt, he is the best Blue Jacket of all time, I would say.
Yeah, I agree, and good for him. Yeah, screw the trolls. I mean, geez, he had a great career in Columbus, so yeah, they can shut up. Blue Jays make a deal today. Matt Chapman coming over from the Oakland Athletics. They love to trade for Oakland third baseman. What'd you make of the move, and what do you think it means for the Blue Jays?
So it worked out well last time. So let's hope that happens again with
Mhm.
a nice little MVP season. Don't get me wrong. I love the trade. I love it's an upgrade, like a substantial upgrade, especially defensively. Like the guy's a machine. We don't have to watch Kevin Biggio try to throw it across the dime bed anymore, which is nice. Um, I would have preferred Jose Ramirez, but I guess beggars can't be choosers. Matt
Right.
Chapman's bat, I mean, it's a very right-handed heavy lineup they have right now. So it would have been nice to add a lefty in there. And he's more of sort of a power strikeout guy, which is fine. But I think they could add a little on base and not as much power into that lineup. But at the end of the day, it's a good trade. It's a huge upgrade from what they had, and it was their biggest need was a third baseman. So I'm pretty thrilled about it.
Yeah, I said that at the beginning of the show. I think the Chapman trade is a better move than getting Freddie Freeman. I think Freeman you could say is a better player, but I just don't see where Freeman was going to fit in with him and Guerrero both playing first base. Where Chapman, you need a third baseman. They haven't had one since Donaldson. I think this was their biggest position of need, and they checked that box today.
Absolutely. Like Freeman, like you said, it would have been nice. What would that have meant in the lineup though? Moving Vladdy over to third base, not ideal. Not ideal.
That might be worse than Kevin Biggio.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're bang on there. So it would have probably been like splitting time, first base and DH. It would have made things a bit awkward. And you're right, third base was exactly what they need. So they hit the nail in the coffin there. And I still saw rumors today that they were exploring the idea of adding Jose Ramirez as a
Mhm.
second baseman. And if that were to happen, then I already think it's would you agree it's World Series or bust for the Jays at this point? I don't know if I'm ready to go that far, but we're approaching it with the rotation.
Yeah, I think if they don't win the American League East, it's not a successful season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. And I think maybe going into next year, if they do win the AL East and they don't do anything in the playoffs, I think next year those expectations maybe sort of World
Right.
Series or bust at that point.
Especially because you got Vladdy and Bichette making no money. right now,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't have their new deals, so it's like having a rookie quarterback. You need to get it now. Like go win one now. Chapman's got 2 years, so that's nice. You had 2 kicks at the can with him before you have to consider paying him or getting a new player at that position. Springer's locked in long term. But if they could, I think they had the best team in the American League East already. I think you could argue they might have the best team in the American League right now. They have their flaws, but I think it's just depending on where you watch it. Like in Canada, the Blue Jays are going to get picked to pieces, just like the Maple Leafs, which I wish they wouldn't because it's just ad nauseum. But nevertheless, you know, I think the Blue Jays get talked about their flaws a lot. But if you look at the Yankees team, they look like a senior citizens home to me, Benny. I mean, Donaldson, I love JD, great player, but he's not what he used to. They're not getting even half of what he was in Toronto. He's had a tough couple of years down in there in Minnesota.
Oh yeah, the Yankees line, like half of them should be wrapped in bubble wrap. I mean,
Right.
as big and jacked and good looking as Stanton and Judge are, like they're an injury
They
waiting to
miss half a
happen.
season every
Yeah,
other year.
every year. And DJ LeMahieu, he wasn't quite as good last year. So you're right, they have a lot of flaws. And I think the Jays are by far they should be the favorite in the AL East. But Tampa, like there's sort of like that gnat that won't go away. I never understand it. They'll be good. They'll have these random young guys that come up and are somehow disgusting. These bullpen guys that haven't been good their whole careers that they turn into 100-mile-an-hour fastball machines. So they'll be good, but it's exciting. It's exciting to be a Blue Jays fan.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you want to see them add another starting pitcher? Do you think they need another starter?
The Jays?
Yeah.
I think the rotation is pretty good. Like obviously if an injury happens, it's a little concerning, but looking at the top 5, I'm pretty content with what it's looking like right now. If Manoah can be what he was last year, that's sort of the big question mark I have. It was nice to see him do it in his rookie year, but now teams have a little more tape on you. They can scout you a little better. So let's see if you can do it again. But I mean, if you have, I don't even know how to pronounce his name right, the Japanese guy or Korean guy they just signed.
Oh, yeah, Kikuchi, yeah.
As your 5th starter, like that's solid right there. So I'm pretty happy with what the rotation looks right now.
And if I'm the Jays, something I do, and I look at Nate Pearson. I don't want him as a starter. I think he's far. Just commit to him being in the bullpen, which I know is tough for them right now because they want him to be a starter. But what if he's the Andrew Miller of the Blue Jays or the Zach Britton? You know, one of these really important guys that could get you 5 to 6 outs in playoff games and really big moments. I think that could be his landing spot, and that's fine too because those guys are so valuable, especially as you get later into the season.
Oh, I could absolutely see him being a machine, like you said, the Andrew Miller type, where he's not necessarily the closer, but you bring him in those high leverage situations where you need that big strikeout, or you need, like you said, that 5-6 outs. Long term, I feel like it'd be tough convincing him to be a reliever. So I feel like in his mindset, like he wants to be that starting pitcher, sort of like all pitchers do, right? You're a starter until they force you to be that reliever. So I feel like that would be hard long term. But this year, like we have the 5 starters sort of in place right now. He's a heck of a weapon out of the bullpen for sure, throwing as hard as he does with some good off speed too.
Yeah. Where do you think the best landing spot for Freddie Freeman is?
I wish Toronto, but it seems like it's down to what now? The Dodgers, Boston, and Tampa somehow in the mix. I don't understand.
I can't see Tampa giving him money.
Yeah, that's what I keep seeing. They're in the mix, but I don't understand it at all. I guess I could see Boston being a decent fit. They have, I think it's what is it, Dahlback at first base. I'm not even sure who their first
They
baseman is.
need him.
Yeah, so I think he would fit in their lineup real well. The Dodgers, I mean, do they need him? No. Will they get him? Probably. It wouldn't surprise me. They're just it's the Dodgers being the Dodgers. So, but to be honest, like he's a guy that he could fit anywhere. Like he's that good. He's so good. Just a pure hitter. I love watching him him play the game. So wherever he ends up, they're going to be lucky to have him. Good Canadian boy too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a half and half.
Yeah.
I think the Red Sox will make because Dahlbeck is not a guy you want playing every day. And the Dodgers could move Muncy over, which the Dodgers could just sign and say, "Well, we got him, you didn't." I mean, that's kind of what they like doing anyway. But there's still some really good players out there. I mean, you got Trevor Story, still a free agent. I mean, Carlos Correa, that one's so interesting to me because is he going to go to a team that could possibly win or just go to a team that for the most money? And that's what I'm interested because I think Correa is a really, really good player. And I do think he's a competitive dude. I don't think he'll be happy if he just takes the most money and then at the end of the year he's sitting with 62 wins playing for the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, I still think the best fit for him is like right where he is, like Houston. Like I don't know if he should leave. And I saw, I don't know if there's any truth to it, but that Houston is sort of circling back on him, seeing if there is any interest there. Because you're right, I do think he is sort of has that competitive edge, and he won't want to just keep losing and losing. Because I think he went through that a bit at the beginning of his career in Houston.
Yeah. Do you think the Mets will look at him? They love to spend money too.
Yes, Uncle Stevie over there with the deepest pockets in the league. I can't see it after they just gave Lindor that ginormous deal.
Yeah.
Because they'd have to convince one of them to move either to third or second, and I feel like those shortstops, like they never really want to make that move.
Right.
So I couldn't see that happening, but I mean, who knows really?
I'll throw a team in the mix, and half of this because the team lost a really important player to injury. But what about the Padres? Because I think they kind of want to put Tatis in right field anyway. He's got a big ticket, and so does Machado, Darvish. But again, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. The Giants are still really good. The Dodgers are what they are. I think the Padres could be a sneaky team. Maybe they throw an offer to Correa and or Story to see if they have any interest.
I like that a lot because I think as good of a hitter as Tatis is, he's really not a good defensive shortstop at all. So, and they experimented him in center field, I want to say a bit, but I think ultimately right field or a corner spot would be the best fit for him. So if you load up a shortstop there, whether it is Correa or Story, I think that's a great fit right there. From what I understand, they want to offload Hosmer's contract before I think they commit to anything big. But if they were to find sort of a suitor for Hosmer and get rid of him, I could absolutely see them making a run at either, like you said, Story or Correa if they wanted to make the biggest splash.
That's the problem is there's no salary cap. So a team doesn't have to take your bad contract if they don't want to, because then they're just paying. That's one good thing about the salary cap. People can complain about it, but I guess that's one good mechanism of it. NFL free agency. It's been a past couple weeks. Of all the quarterback movement over the last couple weeks, which one had the biggest impact for you?
I think it's got to be Russell, I would say, just off the top of my head. He's sort of the biggest name, unless you want to include Tom Brady in this, maybe, then, but we'll leave Tom out of this for now. So I think it's the Russell trade. It's big. I'm a little concerned. I think Denver fans should be a little more concerned than they are because Russell, he's not the old Russell. The guy can't move like he used to. He doesn't have those legs, and from watching him last year, like there was nothing that showed me he's still in that top, the most upper tier of quarterbacks in the league. So I would be a little nervous if I was a Denver fan. But if he can sort of regain some of what he used to be, I mean, they're a good team, and they'll be a threat, even though they play in that absolute beast of division now. So I think he's the biggest one. I'm trying to think. There's been so many. Who else is it? Trubisky to Pittsburgh. Obviously, the Baker situation is getting very odd. I think he's good as gone now. Like that tweet last night he basically said kissed his goodbye to the city of Cleveland. So that could get interesting in the next couple of days. And then all the Deshaun Watson stuff too. The quarterback carousel is nowhere near done at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you on Russ. I think it's a move they had to make. I get it. I still think he's a good quarterback, but he was the fourth best quarterback in, they were the fourth best team in the NFC West. I think he got traded to the third best team in the NFC or the AFC West. So it's not that I think the Chargers, I think they've had a really good free agency. I think Herbert's a stud. They're good, but I agree with you at Russ. He's not the same player. Ever since last couple of years, he takes so many sacks, and that's got to catch up with you. And he was the best option for sure, but I'm a guy who likes Derek Carr. I know people like to kick Derek Carr, but I think he's a pretty good quarterback, honestly. And the Chargers go get Chandler Jones today. I look at this division, Benny. It's great at quarterback. If you look at it at pass rusher, it's elite too. Chandler Jones, Max Crosby. You got Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory. You got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Like, these offensive lines better know what the hell they're doing, because their quarterbacks are going to be on the ground quick if they don't.
Yeah, those division games are going to be fun to watch. And you mentioned the Russ taking all those sacks too. And a lot of people like to throw criticism on the offensive line right away when you see those numbers. But I've seen some sort of like deeper stats looking into that, and take those stats for what you will or whatever. But from what I've read a lot of those sacks aren't necessarily always on the O-line. It's Russ trying to improvise and going somewhere where the O-line's not expecting him. I've heard that he likes to sort of do his own thing on a lot of plays, which lead to a lot of these bad sacks. So obviously the O-line's got to help him a bit, like you said, and that beast of a division. But I think he brings a lot of it upon himself too.
Is Kansas City still the favorite in that division as of right now for you?
Yeah, to me, it's sort of like a New England in the AFC East for that long time. It's like you're the champ until somebody proves that they can knock you off, like Buffalo did to New England. So I think as long as Patrick Mahomes is still Kansas City's quarterback, I think they're the top dog until somebody proves that they can dethrone them for now. But like you said, like, it's going to be close now. I think the Chargers are on the cusp. You mentioned they've had a good free agency. I couldn't agree more. The Khalil Mack, if he can stay healthy, I think he's still a force. You bring in J.C. Jackson and you combine him with Derwin James, like, they're going to have a good secondary, good pass rush. So I think they're on the cusp of breaking out into a real contender.
Yeah, they're good. I wouldn't want to play them, that's for sure. And it's interesting because we'll get to the Baker of it all in a minute, because that's just so fascinating. But what have you made of New England's pretty quiet free agency period thus far?
Yeah, they've done next to nothing, right? I saw Matthew Judon tweeted yesterday. It was sort of a gif of, like, I don't know exactly what it was. It was sort of like, do something. But I mean, they made a lot of big splashes last year in free agency. So, I mean, I wasn't expecting them to do a whole lot. I was a bit surprised they let J.C. Jackson go as easily as they did. I was a bit surprised too. They traded Shaq Mason to Tampa yesterday for a team with not a ton of O-line depth. I thought that was a bit interesting. So it's not ideal. Obviously, you want your team to be out there bringing in some big names and helping boost the roster and spots that you need. But I also don't find it surprising either, based on just what they did last year, and they made all those huge moves. So I think it was bound to be a bit slower this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's a strong wide receiver draft. That's clearly what they need more than anything, because Jacoby Myers is good, but Aguilar is going to be gone. They still have Henry and some tight ends there, but Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. I think it's incumbent on New England to finally draft a receiver and draft a good one. They need – Mac Jones is a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. I don't think he necessarily makes wide receivers better. I think it's kind of the other way around. And I think they need to identify the one they want, and if they have to trade up in the draft to get him, I would do that.
Yeah, based on all the mock drafts I've seen so far, like one of those guys is going to be on the board at that point. But like you said, if you're scouting, if you think the guy you want is going to get taken a little before your pick, I agree. They need to trade up. They need to get that weapon for Mac and do all they can to give him the weapons that you're right. Like he does need some elite receivers outside to make his job a lot easier because he is that good, not great quarterback yet. Hopefully he gets there.
Yeah, I mean, Traylon Burks is a ton of fun. I think he's going to be like Olave, Wilson, Drake. Like there's some good damners. Like the draft's less exciting about quarterbacks, but I think skill position players, there's a ton of really good players there. Let's get to Baker Mayfield because this guy just never ends with content. Progressive, whatever else he's doing. But latest report, as we're talking, that's 20 minutes ago. It just came up my phone. ESPN report says departure likely, even if Deshaun is not acquired. Cleveland wants a quote adult at quarterback.
Whoa, that's a big word.
Yeah, was that letter not one of the most weird things you've ever seen last night? When I saw that come up my phone, I said, "What the hell is going on? He's still on the team."
That's exactly my thought. I'm like, did I miss like the part where he got traded here? Like, what's going on? Because I was like a blatant like goodbye. It was so odd for a guy that's still with the team. But yeah, I think at this point he's good as gone. How do you bring a guy back in the locker room after he just said all those things? So I think he goes to Indy. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know they floated around the idea of Jimmy G, but I could see him landing in Indy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me too. Because Indy, they could get Baker, be competitive. I mean, quite frankly, they'll probably be what they have been the last couple of years, right around the playoffs with Baker. But you stay in that mix. You hope you can get a quarterback next offseason if there's movement, things of that nature. But if I'm Baker, I'm not one of those guys that say, "Oh, he's at the team's at fault for this." He battled through injury last year. I get that, but he played like crap. And it's always, it's Odell's fault, or it's not, and it's never him. And he's got one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and somehow quarterback's the most important position, but not for Baker Mayfield, not for the Cleveland Browns. So I'm not one of those people that I don't have a whole lot of pity. I don't have a whole lot of support for Baker from my view anyway.
Yeah, I kind of agree. You can only make the excuses for so long, essentially. At the end of the day, at some point, you sort of are what you are, and maybe we haven't seen his full potential yet, and maybe he does need that fresh start and sort of coming off the injuries. Hopefully, he gets it and shows us that he is a good quarterback. But yeah, I'm thinking back. I feel like was it a Green Bay game in prime time? I remember watching him
Christmas.
play. Yeah, he threw like 8 million bad interceptions.
Yeah.
Like it was painful to watch. And it's like, dude, I know you're injured, but still, like some of this is on your eyes, and your eyes you can still see as far as we know. So yeah, he has some improving to do because you're bang on. Like you can only make the excuses for a guy for so long.
If you're Deshaun Watson, you've heard the teams, he's got a full no trade because he can basically decide where he wants to go. There's Atlanta rumored, potentially Philly, New Orleans, Carolina, Cleveland met with him. If you could pick any of those teams, where would you go?
To me, it's Philly. For sure. We saw what they could do. I'm not sold on Jalen Hurts. Yeah, he's shown flashes. He can be a good quarterback, but I think you can do a lot better than Jalen Hurts. They made the playoffs with Jalen Hurts and a couple games from Gardner Minshew. So they're clearly they're a good team, solid defense. Maybe you could add a couple weapons, receiver. So I think Philly's the ideal landing spot if I'm Deshaun Watson. I feel like him and Hurts play sort of a somewhat similar style. So I don't think you have to change the offense all that much to what it is now. So if I'm him, that's where I would want to go. And you're not Philly's for the most part a good franchise, sort of you're not going to Cleveland where it's always a dumpster fire and it's never seems to be a good situation. So I think if I was him, that would be the top of my list. But I like some of the other spots too, like New Orleans. I don't think would be Terrible. Atlanta, meh. I'm not sold on that, but Philly would be at the top of my list.
Yeah, Philly, they got some good players, they got decent receivers, and you're in a division that you could win in year one. I think Cleveland's intriguing. Obviously, you're right about ownership and the waste that they've done there, but they traded for Amari Cooper. They still have some great running. I mean, their team is really good, and they could still make some moves. They got rid of Jarvis Landry. They cut Austin Hooper today. But they still have Njoku at tight end, so they still have a great offensive line as well. But Philly wouldn't be bad. I do think Carolina scares me because I don't trust that team just to do smart things. You could say the same thing with Atlanta, but I think if you're Houston, I think Atlanta would be in the back end of my wish list because I don't want to take Matt Ryan. He's got a huge contract. With that cap number, if I'm a team that's not that attractive to me, especially Houston, I think they just plan to lose next year, get a high draft pick with Davis Mills. So maybe it's, maybe I don't know because I don't know what happened with Matt Ryan, but it seems like he's not going to be in Atlanta next year.
Yeah, you're right. That's sort of what it feels like at this point. And you're right, Houston. Like Matt Ryan's not like if he was making like $5 million a year as a backup QB, then that would be a great situation. You bring him in and he can hopefully mentor the next QB, whoever, if they think it's Davis Mills, and sure, if they want to go draft somebody else, we'll see what they do. But him making as much as he does, it doesn't really make any sense for the situation that they are in it feels sort of like a lose now situation that they're in, try to do that rebuild. So I don't think that makes a lot of sense for them either. But it's weird that the whole NFC South really seems to be, even Tampa Bay was sort of in the mix before Brady was coming back. So it's interesting.
If say he goes to New Orleans, if you're Atlanta, do you call Indy to see if they want Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I think Atlanta, I think at this point you do anything you can to get rid of Matt Ryan. I think they should be he's a good enough quarterback that I don't think you're ever going to be sort of in the last place. Like you're going to be stuck in the middle with him, right? This is sort of the last spot you want to be in as an NFL franchise. You either want to have those top picks or you want to be in the playoffs, being stuck, just missing the playoffs or just 11th, 12th in the draft. Like it's going to do you no good at the end of the day. So I think getting rid of Matt Ryan should be a priority for them at this point.
And I also think Matt Ryan in Indy, it's a weak division. Houston's not going to be any good. Jacksonville spent a lot of money, but they're still very young. Tennessee looks to be a good team, but again, second best team right off the jump. They could push for the playoff spot with Matt Ryan at quarterback in that division, I think. I think they could they wouldn't be out of it. They'd still be competitive. It'd be like adding, Phillip Rivers when they did a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think like Matt Ryan in the right situation, I think he can still be a good, effective QB and lead a team to the playoffs. And I think somewhere like
that's a nice little linchpin to have. He's never had a good running game since Foreman, since that Super Bowl, really.
You're right. So yeah, if you could just hand it off to Johnny Taylor 30 times a game, establish some play action there, like I think it would be a pretty good situation for him there. And I think you're right. They could easily compete for a playoff spot right away.
Do you think, and I've said this for the last couple of weeks, I think San Francisco should keep Jimmy Garoppolo this season because I don't know if Trey Lance is ready, number one, but also he got them to an NFC Championship game last year. Whether you like him or not, he did that. And he's not the worst problem to have two quarterbacks that could play on your roster.
Yeah, Trey Lance sort of feels like the biggest mystery in the league at this point. No one sort of knows. I mean, we saw a brief glimpses of him last year. It's tough to judge a guy just on the amount he played. We're not seeing sort of all the practices and what he's doing with those reps in practice. So he's a huge question mark, and it is very interesting to see what they'll do with the situation. I agree. I don't think like Jimmy Garoppolo hurts their chances by any means. I think if anything, he helps them a lot because if Trey Lance does struggle, and you got rid of Jimmy G. What the heck do you have to fall back on, right? You got nothing. So at least he's sort of a security blanket there if they do need it.
I find it funny Jameis Winston hasn't been signed yet. Maybe it's got something to do with the Deshaun Watson of it all, but it might be tough for him because if New Orleans gets Watson, where's he going to end up? It's a game of musical chairs. There's not that many seats left.
Yeah, I thought he would be signing back in New Orleans. I thought like it was a decent fit for him. He showed flashes. He looked pretty decent in the first couple weeks before he got injured. So I sort of thought it would be almost like, hey, you look good. Let's bring you back and give you a full season and see what you can do. So it is interesting. It does seem like they're trying to hold out and get, like you said, the Deshaun Watson in it. So we'll see what happens. As long as Taysom Hill is not taking snaps, I think their fans will be happy.
Yeah, Taysom Hill can be a tight end, running back, anything but a quarterback. I'm happy to see him on the field, but if he's the one catching the football and it's not in a receiving route, I'm not too ecstatic about that. The New York Jets have signed a backup quarterback. Do you care to guess who that is?
It was Joe Flacco, right? Joe Flacco just doesn't go away. And wasn't it for like, what,
2.5 million?
Oh, 2.5. Okay. I thought it was more than that, but I mean, good for him, I guess.
I can't believe he's still in the league.
It's because I feel like every year he gets in like 1 or 2 games and you're like, wow, this guy's still playing, and he looked awful in those games. But I guess he's a good mentor. I guess Zach Wilson likes him. So that would be my best guess. I would think Zach Wilson maybe had some influence in that. Who knows what the Jets are doing, but yeah, Joe Flacco, he doesn't want to go away. Same was it Chase Daniel? I also saw.
Chase Daniel's back in LA.
Yeah, that guy's had a heck of a career. I would love to be him.
5 career starts, $41 million.
I mean, that's the dream right there.
Yeah, and he lives in LA. Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I'll sign up for that. How about this? Marcus Mariota back up to Justin Fields. They play similar, probably learn the offense. I don't know where he might go somewhere else, but I think that would be a fit if he can't find a starting job.
Yeah, that's good. I think that would be a good mentorship for Fields, because you're right. They do play that similar style where they like to mix in the run, get some of those RPOs in. I do think I almost feel like it's tough to say that I would like to see him get another chance as a starter to see what he can do. It's been so long since we've seen it, and he gets in Vegas, like certain packages are designed for him, and he's looked decent. So I would love to see him get another starting job. It probably won't be on a very good team, but I would like to see what he could do as a starter again. I think he deserves that shot. But I do think Chicago makes a lot of sense in a backup role for a guy like Justin Fields to learn from.
Is Seattle going to start Drew Lock? Are they really going to do that? That is a tough. You trade your star quarterback and you go with him with your fan base. That's a tough one to sell.
It's sort of what it feels like, though. I don't know why they would have included him in the trade almost if they didn't plan on at least letting him compete for the job.
Right.
That's what it feels like. But yeah, you're right. I would not be thrilled if I was a Seahawks fan. I feel like Pete Carroll too. Like, if I was him, like, dude, what are you, 70 years old? At this point, your team's gonna stink. I'm shocked he's still coaching, but I mean, credit to him. I guess he loves the sport, so.
No, yeah, absolutely. Now there's a rumor that apparently Seattle might be kicking tires on Baker Mayfield.
Doesn't surprise me. He'll be rumored it'll be like Deshaun Watson. He'll be tied to like 8 different teams by the end of tonight. So
Baker's agent and Jake from State Farm will be releasing some news on where Baker might end up.
It'll be in a commercial.
I mean, lots of movement, but you still got Tyrann Mathieu out there, Winston, Mariota. Like, there's still some good players. So I think for me, I give it to the Chargers so far. I do like the Vegas. I like that Vegas got Chandler Jones so that they're staying competitive. I think this division, you're going to have to be really good to win it, but I like the Chargers, and I also give Jacksonville some credit for at least getting some offensive line. Like I don't think they're gonna be good next year, but Trevor Lawrence, don't let him get sacked 60 times. Don't be Andrew Luck. I like that they're addressing that at least going into next season.
Yeah, I sort of have mixed emotions on the Jacksonville signings. Like the O-line, that's good. The Christian Kirk one was a big
Big sense.
question mark for me.
Yeah.
They're paying him like a wide receiver one when he's probably like a solid number two receiver on a team. Like, good for him. Get your money. And it sort of feels like a situation where Jacksonville, you do have to overpay a little bit to get players to come there. And good for them. Like they have money to spend and they're spending it. But I was a little puzzled by the Kirk signing, but hey, you got to get Trevor Lawrence some weapons somehow. And O-line, like you said, that's a good place to start. Don't let them get beat up every other game.
Cincinnati did a good job too with that O-line. I thought they got
big
Kappa, and I like what they did.
And the Tom Brady effect in Tampa was pretty. Wasn't much of a surprise, but after he signed, you saw they got the center Jensen back, and then Carlton Davis, who I don't think they thought they were going to be able to resign initially. He's back, so it made sense. Tom Brady's coming out of retirement, the timing of it made a heck of a lot of sense right before free agency.
What was more surprising, that he retired or that he came out of retirement?
I think it's got to be that he retired.
Yeah.
Clearly he didn't want to. Like, that was such a weird move. I just keep thinking of Brett Favre. I'm like, Tom, we're better than Brett Favre. We shouldn't be doing this, buddy.
I said that on Monday.
Yeah. I'm like, this is cringy. I love you, Tom, but like, if you're not sure about your decision, like, wait on it a few weeks. Like, you don't have to do this right now. So I wasn't thrilled by it from Tom. Like,
do you think he just retired so that he could tamper with San Francisco to see if they wanted him?
Yeah, because if he was coming back, I would have absolutely had my money on San Fran. I was a bit surprised that he is going back to Tampa, but yeah, that's funny. That might have been exactly what he was doing.
Because he's retired. You can go talk to Shanny, you can go talk to anybody, and it's not against the rules because you're retired.
I'm just saying, he better thank New England fans when he retires for the next time. He better at least mention us once in his 5 Instagram pages. So I'm going to say, Tom, if you're listening out there.
Yeah.
Thank me specifically.
We'll let Jim Gray know on the Let's Go or whatever the podcast that they do together. I know you're a big college athletics guy. You excited for March Madness?
I'm pumped, man. It's like Christmas Eve, the 4 of the best days of the year. I love it. I don't like college football. I get invested in Michigan State, like a huge love them, love following the team. I don't really have a team that I get invested in college basketball quite as much, but I mean, March Madness, how can you not get into it? It's so fun. It's basketball for 12 straight hours for 4 days in a row.
Right.
And there's always crazy things happening. You have the bracket to follow. So no, I love it. It's 4 of the best days of the year for sure.
I got the bracket in front of me. Any teams you like? Any upsets?
So the upsets, there's the obvious ones. That scum school, Michigan. It's not even an upset. They're 11 seed. The NCAA.
I don't know how they got into the tournament. And Texas
it's a joke. The NCAA handed them a bone. They should have at least been in like a play-in game.
Yeah.
So that's the obvious one. Everyone's picking them, and it's not even really an upset. They're favored, I think, by a point in the game. So that's the obvious one. The other one I'm seeing a lot is South Dakota State over Providence. Providence is not a very good team, even though their record looks good, and they won the Big East, which is a very good conference. But all the underlying metrics sort of show that they're not a great team. And South Dakota State, they haven't lost a game in like months, and they shoot the 3 well. And I think that's always a key to pull off an upset in March. If you can hit those threes, you can either come back in the game or you can pull ahead in the blink of an eye. So I like South Dakota State. I think they could pull it off. Vermont is another team I don't mind. I think they can have a good chance. And I think Loyola Chicago is another team that a lot of people are on. That's another, I think that's a 10-7 matchup, so it wouldn't be a huge upset. I think Ohio State's getting discredited a bit. I know they didn't finish the season very well. And I just, everybody loves Sister Jean, but I'm not huge on Loyola Chicago this year. They're not as good as they've been in years past, so I
No,
don't think
no,
they
they
get
don't
out of
got Cam Crutwig and some of those guys that they've had in the
it.
past for sure. I look at like tonight, Rutgers and Notre Dame play. I think if Rutgers wins, I like Rutgers over Alabama. That's one game I kind of have my smell test on. How about Michigan State Davidson? 7-10.
I mean, talk about a matchup for TV ratings. That was so predictable because of the Foster Lawyer thing. This guy was like Mr. Basketball in Michigan. He played, I don't know, 1 or 2 years at Michigan State, transferred to Davidson, so it was very predictable. But I expect it to be a good game. Michigan State's they're a weird team. Like they could go out and beat Gonzaga one night and then they'll lose to some terrible team the next night. They're very Jekyll and Hyde, so they're tough to predict. But a lot of teams, obviously, in college hoops are tough to predict. That's why no one gets.
I think Baylor's got the toughest draw because I think UCLA is a really good team. I think Kentucky is a really good team. I like Purdue, even Virginia Tech. The Hokies have been good. St. Mary's out west. They got a tough road. I don't think they're going to repeat, but even if they want to go deep, I think they got a tough road to get there. Past even the Sweet 16, I don't know if they'll go any further because I like UCLA a lot.
Yeah, I don't have Baylor going. I think I had them maybe Elite Eight, but you're right. They have a tough road. UCLA, I'm hearing they're a little banged up. Some of the good players, so I don't know if there's any truth to that or not. But I have Kentucky getting out of that region. I think they can win in multiple ways, whether it's a shootout or a slugfest. I think they have that in them. So that's the team I have in that region. And you mentioned Virginia Tech too. Like there's a lot of interesting teams that sort of like, do you want to ride with the team that's coming in hot? Sort of like a Virginia Tech or an Iowa or Tennessee, or do you want to go with the teams that maybe didn't do much in the conference tournament, but were good all year, like the Auburns and Illinois, a team like that. So it should be fun. It should be fun.
So what's your Final Four?
What do I have here? So I'm pretty chalk here. I went Arizona, Gonzaga, Kentucky, and Auburn. So I think that's 2 1 seeds and a 2-2 seeds. So very chalk. In the championship game, I have Arizona beating Gonzaga. I think Arizona is the most complete team they have been all year. The Pac-12 we saw last year, it was very underrated. It didn't get enough credit. So I think Arizona is the best team in the country, and I have them cutting down the nets at the end.
Yeah, they got a really good team, and I think Gonzaga's really good. I think both those teams, Gonzaga, obviously, I think they've had great teams, but I think this is their best chance to win. Even though they made the final last year, I think you mentioned Arizona's really good. There's no like team that you're like, okay, I'm scared of this team, or they have a whole bunch of pub going in. They're just. But I watched Arizona UCLA Saturday night. That was a really good game, the Pac-12 title game, and both those teams are really good. And Arizona can beat you, like you said, in a bunch of different ways. And I like their depth when it comes to the center position, the guards. But this tournament's so fun. Like you mentioned, it starts tomorrow at 1:00 noon your time for Eastern. I'm gonna have to sneak a computer into work because I gotta watch it. I gotta follow it. It only happens. Right.
Yeah, you mentioned Guns. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chuck. Cutting you off.
No, it only happens once a year, so you gotta consume as much as you can.
No, absolutely. And players to look out for those of you that don't follow college basketball until now, you got to watch Chet Holmgren in Gonzaga. The guy is an absolute string bean, like 7 foot, but weighs like $110 soaking wet. But he's going to go top 5 in the NBA draft, and he's fun to watch. Him and Drew Timme, like they have a good front court, so keep an eye out for them.
Yeah, I like him and Jabari Smith from Auburn.
Yeah,
he's a really good player. He's good. I like Panchero a lot more in the beginning of the year. I find he's kind of drifted throughout the season from Duke. Maybe he's kind of like their team. I just find he's too in and out. I don't love him as much as I did originally.
Yeah, Duke, I don't trust their defense quite enough to go to the end. They give up a lot of points. I mean, Virginia Tech went off against them. And even you saw their last Coach K send off there against North Carolina. Like, their defense was just Swiss cheese. So I don't think that'll catch up to them eventually. And you're right, Paulo, like, he has some games where he's locked in and you can tell he's easily the best player on the court and he sort of takes it over. But you're right, there's other games where he's sort of, you look at a stat line halfway through the game and he's only taken like 4 or 5 shots, and it's sort of like, dude, like, you're the best player here, go show it. So we'll see. You're right, though, it's so fun. I can't wait.
I just got texted this, and I hope it's a joke. Yeah, it is a joke, but number 1 overall pick in a league-wide fantasy draft. Who do you draft, McDavid or Schmaltz?
Yeah, if we're going recently, I think you got to lean Schmaltz here.
Yeah, recency bias. He's on fire.
He's the best player in the league.
Yeah. No, so we head down the stretch here. You think your Blue Jackets will trade off Domi, any other piece at the trade deadline, or do you think it'll be pretty quiet?
Yeah, I think they're trying to get rid of Domi and Corpusalo and maybe a depth defenseman. I don't expect them to get much if they even are able to get rid of them. I do think Max Domi, he's played pretty good hockey recently. He's not like going to light up the score sheet, but he brings that fire, and he's sort of like he'd be a good depth bottom 6 player on a playoff team, I think. Maybe some people don't seem to like sort of his attitude and the way he carries himself on the ice a lot of times, but I do think he could help a team out. So hopefully he gets traded. And Corpusalo, he's been awful, so I don't think they'll get much for him. So
Yeah.
It'll be a pretty quiet deadline for them, I think, but we'll see.
You been happy with Laine's production lately?
I was just thinking before I came on the last time I was chatting with you, we were talking right before we started recording about how bad the Jackets have been, and specifically how bad Laine had been. I think since that day, he's been probably like a top 3 goal scorer in the league. Like, the guy, he was on an absolute heater there for a while, and he's still playing good. So, I mean, he's like so Jekyll and Hyde. Like, right now, I'm like, yeah, lock this guy up. 8 times 9. Like, I don't care. Give him all the money he wants. But then we'll talk in a month, and I'm like, yeah, this guy is useless. So whatever. He's kind of that streaky player. He sort of always has been. But when he is on a tear, he is fun to watch.
Yeah, he's a perfect 1 to 2 year player because he needs to be motivated to play well. I think giving him a long-term deal would scare the hell out of me if I was a general manager. But Benny, it's always fun chatting with you. I will do it again soon, but thanks for taking the time, man, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jug. Enjoy the basketball.
You too. That was Ben Murray, everybody. He great to talk to Benny. He's always excited, always got great takes, and he's a New England fan. He likes Columbus. He's got a wide variety of teams that he roots for. Michigan State. So I appreciate that he doesn't just stick in the New England area or just stay with the Maple Leafs or the teams that are just at the surface level that you can just pick and it's easy. So good chat with Benny. March Madness technically started last night, first 4. He had Texas Southern beating Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and he had Indiana get past Wyoming. 2 more games tonight, Wright State, Bryant, Rutgers, Notre Dame, and then the real stuff starts tomorrow, and I cannot wait. I love this tournament. There's a lot of great stuff. This weekend you got the Valspar and golf, you got hockey, you got basketball. I just want to close out the podcast by saying congrats to the UMB women's team for winning game 1 of their best of 3 series last night against Santa Fe. Obviously, the better half of the Warren children is on that team. So congrats to Tally and the women down there. Hopefully they can close it out tomorrow night as they head on the road to St. Francis Xavier. So I'll keep you guys posted here on the podcast, but be back tomorrow, solo show tomorrow. Casey will be by Friday. So that's what's on tap for the rest of the week. I'm sure we'll still have lots of more news in the hockey world and in the baseball world and the NFL. So We'll get into all of it as the week goes on, but have a great night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is To The Point.